Welcome to the Me, Myself and Mine podcast. Today we are joined by Megan Reeves, a skydive enthusiast with nearly 500 jumps under her belt. However, 2 years ago, at the age of 22, she had a life-changing skydiving accident, breaking her spine, her pelvis, her ribs and her leg, which left her with a 10% chance of living. But despite all of this, she's now back to walking, running, climbing, going to the gym and even skydiving. In this podcast, we're going to be discussing all of the battles and breakthroughs that she's been through on her inspirational journey of recovery. We hope you guys enjoy the podcast. All right. Hi Megan, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Hi Megan.
Yeah, really good, really good. How about you?
Fantastic, brilliant. It's a great honour to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
you're out in Portugal, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, I am at the moment. I'm just waiting the winter out here, skydiving and anything else.
And so obviously I presume you're missing this lovely weather that we've got at the minute.
No, not at all. I prefer the sunshine.
Yeah, it's definitely a decision well planned out, that.
I know.
Escape from the UK, which is good.
Well, this podcast is obviously we're going to be delving into your skydiving story, and the accident and then the recovery that you've been through.
Yeah.
I'd first like to just start by asking, how did you first get into skydiving?
Well, I was in the pub and then I'd never done anything like it in my life at all. And then I was speaking about I'm a Celebrity and how it all looked really cool. And then we just booked it. And then at the time I was earning so little money, I was like, oh, well, I've paid for this now, I have to do it. So then I went along and I hated it so much. Like until we actually did it, like going up in the plane and I was crying. I kept saying to the tandem instructor, like, I don't want to get out that whole way up. And he was like, you'll be fine. And I must have annoyed him so much because I just kept saying it. And then as soon as you're in the door, it just feels like it's like a slate wiped clean. And it's like, you're just looking down and you're so high up, you don't feel anything. And then after that, I just got completely hooked on it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an out there sort of passion and out there activity to be hooked on, isn't it? Or did you just in that moment that you jumped out?
Yeah, from that first moment, I knew that was it. I knew that was what I wanted to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've kind of wanted to do it myself before, but I
I
push myself. I haven't pushed myself to do it yet, so maybe when the pubs reopen.
Yeah, maybe we'll go for a drink.
To actually just book it.
Such courage,
yeah.
But I've always wondered, when you actually step out, is there any other feeling that you can is it like being on a ride, or is there no feeling at all? What is that experience like as you drop down?
It's almost like there's like nothing. So when you go over a roller coaster and you're going down a hill, you kind of get that stomach dropping feeling. You don't get anything like that. You kind of you drop out and it's like there's nothing else in the world that matters. It's like even if you physically try and think of anything else, you wouldn't be able to. It's like there's just your mind's so in control of everything that's happening in that moment because it has to be. It's like if you don't, you have to look after what you're doing in that time and be aware of where everyone else is and what they're all doing. And it's crazy.
With the nature of the moment, a lot of the times we're thinking in the future or thinking about the past, to practice mindfulness and, to be absorbed in the moment is quite difficult. So I suppose if you can do an activity that literally throws you straight into that, I suppose that's how.
Yeah, definitely. I imagine it's kind of, I haven't really done many activities like that, but I imagine it's kind of similar to when you're surfing and you're like riding a wave and things like that. It's the same kind of thing that you're just so in the moment that like going through that nothing else really matters at that point then. But when I first started learning, I hated it so much because when you have to go through so many levels of with it, you'll do some with 2 instructors and then you'll go down to 1 instructor and they're there looking after you, making sure you're doing everything okay. And I hated it so much. It took about 30-40 jumps to be like, I kind of like this now. I'm going to try this. But
sounds amazing. I mean, like you're saying, I suppose you're in the flow with it, aren't you? You have to be in that moment, don't you?
yeah, definitely. And half the reason I only carried it on was like, well, I told everyone I was learning to skydive, but no one believed me. So now I'm kind of committed.
So you're holding yourself accountable to it because you've told them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
On that note, you're saying you've got to be in the moment. You've got to really be in the now, haven't you? As you said, because it's a hell of a dangerous sport, and probably one of the most dangerous sports, I presume, across the globe. Jumping out of a plane with a parachute on, 15,000 feet up, doesn't really sound like heaven to me. On that note, unfortunately, you had an accident, didn't you?
Yeah.
Are you happy to sort of talk us through what actually happened on the day? With the first point, if we can ask, was that particular jump or that day any different to the usual jumps you'd had preceding that particular jump?
Yeah, so I wanted to take up wingsuiting for a while, and that was the day of my first and only wingsuit jump. Everything else on the day seemed normal. I was at the same place that I'd normally go to, the same people all around. And it was really good. Like we did, you have to do kind of a lot of ground school before you go up. So you'll learn all about how it's going to fly, where you've got to go. But there's so much to it that you have to be aware of before you go up. So we just went through all of that, did all of that. And then when we were in the plane, everything was fine. Me and my coach were like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And it was terrifying. It was almost like I had about 300 skydives at this time, maybe 300, 350. And it felt like I was back at the beginning. I was like, oh my God, like I'm jumping out of a plane. Because it was just something completely different being in a wingsuit. So that was kind of overwhelming being in that situation alone. But then once I got out, it was good. It was flying, and I was like, I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, like I'm flying a wingsuit. I'm like a mini little pilot here.
I should imagine.
For anyone that obviously doesn't know what that is, what is the difference between skydiving without or with a wingsuit?
So normal skydiving, it's like you've got full movement of your arms, your legs, and you're kind of free to move in whatever way you want. But in a wingsuit, you've got a lot of material that connects your legs together, your arms together. So instead of falling straight down vertically, you kind of glide at this angle. So it's more, you're kind of flying around. And as you get more progressed with that, you can start flying with other people and doing lots of really cool stuff with all that.
Yeah.
But it also comes with a lot of extra risk because you've got that extra material there. So if anything does go wrong, then it can kind of cause extra complications there.
So as you're describing that to our viewers and listeners, it sounds absolutely terrifying to me and Dan, and I'm sure quite a lot of listeners. But is the speed, is it a lot faster in the suit than the normal skydiving?
Once you kind of get experienced with it, you get a lot more. I don't know all the ratios of everything because obviously I never carried it out and got that into it, but you can get a lot more forward speed. So for example, we're out here in Portugal at the moment and we're at the drop zone, and if they go out on a wingsuit jump, they'll be like, well, we can fly over the golf course, we can go here, and you can kind of choose where you want to be going and pick a route and things like that. It's quite cool. And you kind of but you have to kind of know about where the winds are coming from and all those kind of things to go along with it.
Of course. So what's the feeling like? Can you describe the difference between both sort of, the skydiving and the wingsuit? Is it a completely different feeling?
Yeah, so on neither of them you really get the feeling of falling at all. But on the wingsuit, it's kind of like it's just there's a lot of tension in the suit, so you just have to be able to fly that really rather than just flying your body.
Okay, to sort of direct it. Yeah. On that day, if we can ask, I'm sure you went through quite a lot of trauma. What actually went wrong?
So once you get to a certain height, you have to get your parachute out. Obviously, with it being my first ever wingsuit jump, I didn't like it. Like everything was going really well, and then as I kind of closed all my wings to get my parachute out. I did that, and then you normally have to deploy the parachute while basically lying on your belly, so that then the parachute comes out and then it's got a lot of clear air to come out into. But what happened with mine was just a complete freak accident. So like, it was as the parachute was coming out, I started diving in the wingsuit head down. And obviously I picked up a lot of speed going downwards like that. So then when my parachute came out, it opened quite quick, because I don't know, it just happened to be a quick opening on that one that I did. And it kind of like, it yanked me from being vertical downwards to being vertical upwards. So the force of that, it kind of yanked me 180 degrees upright.
Yes. And
with that, I kind of I didn't black out. I could feel everything, but I couldn't see, and it was black, and there was like loads of stars everywhere. And then I could kind of feel like a really like strong tingling pain in the bottom of my spine, and I was like, at the time I was like, oh, maybe I've got whiplash. I didn't think anything of it that serious, because of the adrenaline. Everything was going on so quick and so intensely. And then after maybe 3 or 4 seconds, I could see again, and I looked up, and my parachute was, it hadn't fully opened properly. So it was kind of spiraling downwards. So maybe still going about 70 miles an hour downwards still at this point. So then you have emergency procedures that you follow. Like, so if your parachute doesn't open properly, you'll get rid of it, and then there's another handle to get your reserve out, and then problem solved. That's normally how things work. So I went to do that, and then I grabbed my handles, but I could move my arms, but I couldn't take a grip on anything. It was almost like my muscles wouldn't work at all. So I was trying to grab that the whole time, and it just wasn't working. So I had a really clear head at the time, considering what was going on. And I was thinking, well, I can't do that, so I'll try something else. So I thought, well, I'll try and unzip the wingsuit, so maybe I can get out of it that way, and then I might have more freedom in my arms to do this. And then I tried to do that, and I couldn't hold on to the zips either. And then that was when I started to panic, and I was like, oh no, like, I can't do anything here. So then I kept trying again, and then I was using both hands at this point to try and pull it. And that was when I was kind of put pieces together a bit, and I was like, I've broke my back, like I can't do anything here. And then I think I opened my first canopy at around somewhere between 5,000-6,000 feet. So I had quite a lot of time on my hands. So probably about a minute before the ground, I'd say. And then the whole way down, I could see how close I was getting to the ground, because I was looking at my altimeter, which would tell me how high I was throughout the whole time. And as I was getting lower and lower, I had an audible altimeter as well that was kind of like beeping at me and being like, you need to pull, like, you need to sort this out now. And then I just got to a point where I was like screaming and kicking, and I was like, there is nothing that I can do at all. Like, I was trying with everything I could to get this parachute gone and get the other one out. And then it was hard. It was so hard. I was trying with everything I had to do that. And then all of a sudden, it was like, it just went so peaceful, and I just kind of gave up, and like I let my body go limp, and I was just like, I was looking at the ground coming at me, and I was like, this is okay, like I'm gonna die now, and I'm fully okay with that, and there's nothing that I can do. And I kind of just watched the ground coming at me, like, I can't do anything right now. And then I don't know what happened, because I can't even explain how intense that. It was kind of like an out of body experience I had. And then all of a sudden, like, I was maybe at about 1,500 foot at this point. So I was really low, and I was like, no, like, just one more try. And I've got a handle on my other side, which gets my reserve canopy out. So I got my whole arm through that and pushed it down, like kind of leaned over with my body weight. And that managed to get the second canopy out. But then, because I hadn't managed to get rid of the first one, and the first one was spinning around so quickly, it kind of it came out, and it slowed me down, maybe to 40-50 miles an hour. but they just kind of kept spinning, and I just fell the rest of the way and hit the floor then.
Oh my gosh. So with that tremendous impact, what actually happened then? What did the impact cause to you?
So from the impact, I broke all the lower part of my spine. It was completely shattered. All my whole pelvis was shattered. I had like significant internal bleeding from it. All the ribs on my right hand side and all of my left leg. And I was just like, when I first had that impact, I was just lying there, and I was, for the first few seconds, I was so confused. It kind of felt like, I can't even explain. I still kind of struggle to find the words to explain it all. But I was just lying there in the grass like, how am I alive? And then after a few seconds, I couldn't feel anything in my body at all. I was just like, what's happening? Like, has this even just happened? And then all the pain started kicking in, like after a few seconds, and it was like unreal. It was horrible.
How quick did the emergency services get to you, or any help, as it were?
Yeah, they were incredible. So it felt like I was lying there for maybe about half an hour, because I had no concept of time at this point. Because I couldn't even move, like from the impact, like my helmet had like come flying off, and I was just lying there like, well, I don't know. I can't even see anyone. I'm looking this way, but I can't, like, my body was kind of like paralyzed at this point. I was like, I can't even like look the other way to see or ask for help or get my phone out or but someone from the drop zone, the CI there, he was with me within about 30 seconds, and he was like, Megan, it's okay, like you're breathing, blah blah blah. And I was like, and I was so confused. I was just like, who are you? And he was like, well, like, it's okay, we've got an ambulance on the way. And the paramedics got there maybe within about less than 5 minutes, and then an air ambulance, I'm not sure, maybe like 15. So they were there really quickly.
And after that, how long were you actually in hospital for?
I was only in hospital initially for about 3 weeks, really. But the hospital experience was like something different in itself, because I got taken straight into intensive care and I had all the scans and stuff. And at that point, I was given about a 10% chance of living because of how much internal bleeding that I had from the damage to my pelvis. And then they also couldn't operate on this just because it wasn't very, like, none of it was very stable. So my accident was on a Sunday, and then the next day they managed to operate on my leg. And then maybe 2 or 3 days later, I had a 16-hour operation on my spine and pelvis to put all that back together. But for the days in between, I was kind of just in hospital, like in and out of consciousness, but I couldn't move, and like I was kind of temporarily paralyzed because my spine wasn't attached to my pelvis anymore. So I just had to lay there and wait, really.
And you were saying you were sort of in and out of consciousness. Were you in pain, or did you have no concept of what was going on? Was you clear? What was your?
It was incredibly painful. I couldn't even move. I could move my head just about, and that was it. But everything else, it was so painful. Like it would just knock me out as soon as I kind of came around a bit. But I had some really weird kind of, I guess, spiritual experiences like that. I really struggle to explain a bit because they don't really make any sense. But there was at one point where it was just before I was going in the air ambulance. I remember I was just screaming and crying and like in so much pain, and then all of a sudden I was just like, oh, I think I need to sleep and rest. And I just closed my eyes, and then I was like, the pain's gone. And I kind of felt like it's like, not in a religious way, I'm not like I saw the light, but I was kind of in this strange situation where I felt like my spirit was like floating in like this empty black space, and there was like a light at the end, and I was just in this space, like just me, but it was like the universe. And it was kind of like, it was a complete, like when people say about their near-death experiences and they have all these weird things go on, I had one of those, and I feel like that's what's been quite hard to come back from, is going from that to coming back to normal and going back to work. And it took me a while to get my head around everything.
Yeah. And I mean, did you have any of those experiences whilst in hospital? you know?
No, just before. I never had it again.
Yeah. So I suppose it's that tremendous amount of pain that you're in,
Yeah.
and then sort of your body going into some kind, well, whether it was a spiritual experience.
Yeah. It kind of felt like my body was just like shutting down, and that was
Trying to protect you, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, you know, obviously you've got these, you know, horrendous physical injuries, the spine, the pelvis, the leg, you know, but whilst you were lying there in hospital, you know, what was going on in your mind, and how had this, you know, how has this accident had an effect on your mental health?
Yeah, so when I was first in hospital, because I was so confused, I was on so many painkillers, like non-stop. I had a morphine drip, which I could every 5 minutes I could just press it and get a shot of morphine, and it was like I loved it. So when I first got into hospital, it was so confusing. I couldn't really understand what had happened. So when I was first there and I was in the intensive care bit, I think I was in that part of the ward for maybe about 14, 15 hours. And the whole time I was just lying there, I was just looking at the screen above me with like my heart rate, my blood pressure, and all those other, I don't know much medical stuff at all. I was just lying there, and for the whole time I was there, I just stared at the screen and I was like, well, if those numbers don't change, then I can't die. Because if my heart's still going and my like blood pressure's still the same, like what's gonna happen? Like, so I just, for like nearly a day, I just stared at it and watched the numbers, and then it was kind of a bit strange after that, because then I got taken to another ward, and then I had my operation. But then after, I'd never had an operation before even, so like I'd never broken a bone before, so I didn't know what to expect. So I came out of my leg operation, but by this point I still couldn't move anything. So, and I didn't remember going in for an operation, and I was so out of it on painkillers. I thought they were trying to steal me. I was like coming off all like, I was like coming back into the consciousness after the surgery, and the woman was obviously just trying to be really nice and make a bit of conversation to calm me down. And she was like, what do you do for work? And I was like, oh, I sell houses, I work on a building site. And she was like, and then she said to a colleague like, oh, she makes a lot of money. And I was like, oh, they're gonna steal me. And I just kept having these really irrational thoughts like all the time. And they kept knocking me out on like ketamine so they could temporarily do stuff without actually putting me under. And I kept having like all these really strange hallucinations where like all the walls were like yellow and I was painting myself yellow, and it was completely bizarre. But I don't think I really clicked onto what had happened until I woke up after the spine operation on the Thursday, and my surgeon came in and he was like, we're done, that all went well, you'll be able to walk again. And it was like, what? That's crazy. And then that day, so the day after I had a complete spinal fusion. I've got about 9 pins in my spine, which are all plated together. I've got 16 pins in my leg, which is plated. My whole pelvis is plated. And they just started physio the next day, which is crazy that they can do that.
It's unbelievable. It just sounds like surreal.
I know. When I'm seeing it, I'm like, this is weird.
I mean, there's been times where you've been speaking and I've just got like goosebumps, and I just can't imagine that situation and just that injury and that impact. And then you're just here now talking about it.
Yeah, I know. It's literally crazy. But there was like it was kind of like I had to heal my body separate to my mind. I was like, well, I can't do all this in one go. Like, this is too much. So I was like, I need to walk before I can do anything. So when we started the physio, I had to start learning to walk again, and I had to learn to go to the toilet again because my pelvis was so badly damaged. I couldn't do anything. So even just like small things like that like I never take any of that for granted now, nothing at all. Yeah. But like the only way I can explain how hard it was learning to walk again was, imagine if you've got a 200 kilogram weight like tied to each ankle and you've got to lift that, as well as not being able to move, and if you fall, then you're kind of stuck there. It was incredibly hard. So when I first started, it would be my physio would be like, sit up in bed, and then the next day it would be like, sit up in bed twice, until I got to the point where my blood pressure wasn't dropping, so I didn't pass out on them. And then it would be like, well, you'll stand up. And then I don't know where this motivation came from, because I've never been like it before, but every single day I was like, I'm going to do this. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It's crazy.
You know, it was stripping you right back almost, you know, to who, obviously we know how to walk. You don't remember not knowing how to walk. So
it's all natural functions, isn't it? They've been taken away from you, and those challenges you've gone through. Did just a quick one. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what you've actually gone through. Did your confidence increase incrementally, you know, slightly each day, because you could sit up twice and then progress through the physio?
Yeah, I guess at the start I had this massive boost of like, well, I went from not being able to move at all, like I couldn't roll over in bed onto my side or anything. Like I had to have nurses, like I had to have 3 nurses kind of push me over just to help me do that thing. And then I was in hospital for, I think it was about 3.5 weeks initially, but I had a lot of problems, so I was in and out of A&E all the time after. But by the time I left, I don't know how far, on a Zimmer frame, I could probably walk maybe about 10 meters in about 20 minutes, half an hour. So the progress I had initially was incredible. It was so quick, and then I got discharged, but I don't think I was ready to go home, because when I got home, because obviously I just live in a standard house, so my bedroom was upstairs. I couldn't get up or down the stairs at all, so I was just stuck in my bedroom for I don't even know how long, for such a long time, which was bad enough for my mental health anyway, let alone trying to do physio as well as all that. But I ended up, because of how much I was struggling, I had a lot of problems going back to hospital for a few days, then coming back out, and then that's when the nerve damage pain started. And that was worse than the whole accident together. The pain, it was like when they first told me that I had nerve damage, after when he came in and said like, oh, you like the operation's gone well, and then he was like, we got nerve damage, and I was like, nerve damage, like I can get through that. But the pain was like, and I've never had anything like that. It was when, I don't know if it was from the operation or from the actual impact itself, but I completely crushed one of the nerves in my spine. So now I don't have any feeling in one of my legs still now, and it doesn't really have full use either. So I can't get the movement of walking. Even still, it's been nearly 2 years now, and I can't kind of lift my foot up to go onto my toes. So a lot of everyday tasks are still quite difficult. So it's just kind of learning to deal with that.
Yeah. So I remember, you know, you've come to the talks on the crutches and things like that, and you've talked about the nerve damage, but until you fully go into this, you really just don't understand how bad it was. I mean, you say, you know, skydiving accident, and you think, ooh, but going through that in my head, I'm just picturing it all, and it's just like, I can't get my head around it. But
me neither.
it is incredible that you're where you're at. But, you know, in this story, you know, you're saying you're now at home, and it's sort of starting to sink in with what's happened, and you've been stripped back from somebody that's just jumped out of a plane.
Yeah.
What you want to do in life, and you're a very, you know, I imagine a go-get-it kind of person.
Yeah.
How did, you know, when it started to sink in, how did that start to make you feel? You know, because I mean, I know we've spoke before, you were saying about anxiety and feeling a little bit lost. You know, could you talk a bit of that?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed with PTSD probably, I can't even remember. I don't really have much of a concept of time within that time period, but I really struggled to kind of come to terms with what had happened, because as soon as I kind of got home and I was a bit more settled, and I was like, yeah, I'm getting a bit better, I feel like it kind of like all came crashing down on me mentally then. I was like, whoa, like I can't deal with this. And I I'd spend like maybe 3 hours a day just hysterically crying, like having a panic attack and being like, I don't know what to do, I don't know, because I couldn't even put it, took me months to put into words and actually really explain to people what had even happened, because I couldn't even bring myself to talk about it. And then there wasn't anyone that I could speak to either that had had anything like a similar situation, or similar, even really people with similar injuries who I could kind of relate to that much. So it was a really lonely time, because as much as I could say to people, here's what I've been through, they could only see me there and then when I'm kind of in a better way and could physically talk about it. But it was really hard to talk about.
So with your journey then of this recovery, this amazing tale, survival challenges and your determination to see yourself through. You had physical therapy alongside the post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And did you have NLP and CBT?
Yeah.
Side of things.
Yeah. I was really lucky with one of my friends, Jocelyn. She's such an incredible woman. Like she's got a business where she does all NLP and like hypnotherapy and osteopath. Like she does everything. She's wonderful. But I don't know, we had like this bit of a connection, and she kind of knew how much I was struggling with it. And at the time I was in a really bad way. I was really suicidal. I was kind of, especially with the PTSD, I was trying to go back to work, and I was like, I can't sit here at my desk and pretend that this is a life stress. Like I'll be sat there and people would be coming in and saying all this stuff, and I'd be like, I can't deal with you. Like I really struggled at the time to deal with anything like that. I spent a lot of time kind of, it felt like my body was here and I was all the way up there watching down on myself. And sometimes that would go on for days on end, and I wouldn't even really have any emotional feelings. I'd just kind of be completely numb to everything. And then I'd have the occasional panic attack here and there. It was almost like I wasn't even like a person at that point, it felt like. Yeah. So then she started doing NLP with me, and it changed everything. It was crazy. So I used to get flashbacks of like hitting the ground and feeling the internal bleeding and stuff. And then it's crazy to things how it even works in your head, because like again, I can't really everything's still a bit of a blur, and I'm still piecing things together from that year still. But with some of the therapy she did, I used to get a lot of, it would kind of, if I ever got a flashback, I'd get like physical things with it as well. So it would feel like my insides were like burning where I broke everything. And she'd be like, okay, well, imagine a printer, or a scanner. So it kind of has this line coming down like this. And she'd be like, and she'd get me to describe how it felt internally. And I was like, well, it feels hot. And she was like, what color does it look like? And I was like, well, red. And she was like, well, think of a nice color that's opposite to it. I was like, okay, green. So I just had to imagine this like ice cold green line, like a scanner, just coming down over me. And then whenever she'd make this noise, it'd go again. And we just kept going and going and going. And ever since then, I haven't had it. Like I haven't had a flashback like that ever since. It's
amazing.
So good.
So that would be basically akin to you still got the memory of the event, but the emotional trauma is gone.
Yeah, and she also did this kind of one that helped a lot with processing my emotions with it, where I'd be in a cinema and then I'd be watching myself watch the accident, and then I'd also be like back here watching that person. It was really hard to imagine all that going on, especially when you've got so much going on in your head, but it really worked. And I can't understand how it works, but it did. So I always think now as well, if anyone else is ever going through it doesn't have to be a trauma situation or something as severe as this. It could be something that you're struggling to process with. These things can help with so much. But
definitely. So the therapy helped the mental and the physical separation. Did that mind therapy then help your body, physically? Did that help with the smaller movements and the progression, from hitting the ground to now beginning to function more?
Yeah, I guess because once I could kind of I was kind of stuck in a really bad cycle of it all, and I was like, because of how much I was struggling mentally as well, that was having effects on the physical side. So I was taking about I was taking about 50 painkillers a day, all morphine, codeine, amitriptyline, gabapentin, all like really strong painkillers. And then I'd even have to be taking painkillers. No, I'd be having to take tablets to counteract the painkillers' effects on my stomach to keep its line there, because I'd be taking that many. And then once we went through this therapy together, it was almost like I felt like I had a weight lifted off my shoulders. So I was like, well, now I can focus on getting physically better again. And then for a while, I kind of went back and forth. So it took me a while to kind of process everything mentally. And even now, I'm still going through all that. But it would kind of be like, well, we did that for a bit. And then I was like, well, I feel a bit happier now. I'm going to go away and do this physio and like work really hard on this, start back at the gym. And then I came like completely crashing down again. So then I ended up getting help and going through CBT then. And I think that's what helped the most for me.
Okay, fantastic. So with all of this help then, what was the time scale approximately, Megan?
So my accident happened it was February 2019. And then I think I did the NLP therapy maybe around August time. And then I started CBT towards the end of the year. So maybe about September, October.
Yeah. And you're saying that CBT really helped. Did that help you to notice the behaviours that the thoughts that you'd then have, which then led to the feelings and the behaviours?
Yeah, it kind of helps you realise like how you're processing the thoughts as well. And she gave me a lot of information on how to deal with because one of the main things that I used to really struggle with the PTSD was the disassociation. I'd spend so long kind of outside of my body. And I really struggled to kind of bring it back in. So she gave me a lot of methods that I could use, even just breathing methods and like things that I could do or look at or like practice myself to bring myself back in. And I felt like once I started doing those things, at the time when we were saying about it in therapy, I was like, I'm not going to do that. But then when it actually came to practicing in real life, I was like, well, I don't have a choice, so I'm going to do it. And then it does really help a lot.
I suppose it helped you become more, the accident maybe made you more disassociated from your body. Like you said, you were looking at it from a distance.
Yeah.
Able to process yourself, but actually to ground yourself back into your physical body.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really helped.
Yeah, definitely. They did really help me.
With this experience, as you're talking us through, have you got a greater appreciation of how powerful the mind is? That it can lead the body and vice versa?
Yeah, completely. I think it's completely changed my outlook on life and just my attitude to everything. So I think I fully think that everything's mind over matter. Like it was when I first started walking again, it was physically impossible. And when I had my accident, it was like, well, you're not going to live. But then it's kind of like you just have to. I think the whole thing on life is just your outlook on things. And as much as you're struggling with things, there is always some kind of way through and some way to process things and work your way through it. But I fully believe that anything that's going on in your body, you can control in your mind now.
Brilliant. Mm-hmm. And you're now, is it 2 years on from the accident?
Yeah, 2 years next month.
2 years, and you're back to skydiving.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through the process of getting back in a plane? How's that been?
That was really hard. I think a big thing that helped me get through that first year of recovering and getting through a lot of the thing that helped me get through the physical side was like, well, I'm going to do this again because I love it. And that was kind of what kept me going and kept me motivated to keep doing my physio. Like it's 2 years on and I still have to do physio every single day just to keep going and keep getting better. But I also kept trying to do things over the year to help me mentally get back into it. So I started off by, I hadn't long been off crutches, so I couldn't walk very well. But like I went up in the plane and stuff, and that was quite scary, but that was fun. That was very fun. And then I kept doing things like that. So then I went in the indoor skydiving with a wind tunnel with my coach, and we kind of just had to play around in there so I could get used to, because I had to kind of learn how to refly my body as well, because without feeling in one of my legs, I don't really know what I'm doing with it without looking at it now.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then I knew all along I was not going to jump out on my own for the first time again. I was like, I'm going to do a tandem. There's no way I can make myself get out. And on the day we went to do the tandem, it was like terrifying. As soon as I was on a call and they were like, right, you've got 15 minutes and then we're going to go up, I was having like the biggest panic attack ever. I was like, I can't breathe. And they were like, we can't take you up if you're like this, like just calm down. And my instructor was so nice. He's like a good friend of mine as well. So like, we just like, as soon as we went up there and the plane door opened, I was like, I'm ready. I want to do this. And there's nothing else in this world I want to do. And then it took a while to get my medical sign, because I had to go back to my surgeon and whatnot. But then getting back into jumping on my own was, and still is, like a really hard process. So I started off by, me and my boyfriend were like, well, we'll jump out, the two of us together, and we can just have fun and like just look at each other. And that was the plan. And then we did it, and I come down and I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. And then I was like, well, I'm going to do a few more today, just so I'm like easing myself back in. And then I keep just having these dips. So I'll go through phases where I'm absolutely loving it, and I'm like, this is like the best thing in the world. Like, I'm so lucky to be able to get back to this. And then I'll have a few weeks where I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm just gonna focus on other things, and I don't want to think about that at all. Because sometimes it gets a bit too much, and then sometimes I'm like, this is all I want.
Yeah. But it's amazing that you're back doing that thing that you love, even what it caused in the first place. But I feel like for anybody listening to that, that's just so inspirational.
Yeah, I'd like to hope so.
It's an incredible story, and I'm sure, we've got a couple of questions left, but you've definitely got to come in on this point. Would you say to listeners out there that are going through tough times, whatever they may be, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel? You can make it, you can get through the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially going from a place where I've been physically in that situation and mentally, like I feel like in both terms I've gone through such a lot, and I've learned so much. And there was times when I was trying to learn to walk again, I was like, this is impossible. Like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And then same mentally, I'd be like, I'd get myself into such a bad place, and then I'd be like, I can't get out of this, and I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. But then I don't know, there's just something there, and you have to find those things to keep you going, and no one else can do that for you, and that's the hard part.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with what you're saying, with the spiritual experience, the therapy, the physical therapy, you found something. Unfortunately, you've been pushed into such a dark place. You found that power within you, didn't you?
Yeah, I also started, I don't know whether I use it more for mental healing or physical healing, but I had an instance not that long ago, really, because all my back's quite sensitive in terms of, if I injure it, then I'm out for a long time. Because there's so much metal in there. But I was just doing some stretching, and I must have done it at like a bit of a funny angle, and it something just clicked in my back, and I couldn't walk for like a few weeks again. And I was like, oh, I can't do this again. I went to A&E, and they just gave me more painkillers, and I was like, I'm not taking those anymore. I can't, they messed with my head so much, I can't put myself through that again. So I ended up going to see a Reiki lady.
So energy healing, yeah?
Yeah, and she's completely changed my life, completely. So when I went there, I couldn't walk, or I kind of gone through all that again, and I was like, well, I couldn't even go to the toilet. My poor boyfriend was having to pick me up off the toilet and stuff because I couldn't do it myself. And then I went to her, and then I didn't say anything about it, because I was like, well, I don't want her to sit there and be like, oh, you have a bad back. So I didn't really give too much away. I kind of said that I'd had an operation on my spine and my leg, and that was it. And 2 days later, the pain was completely gone. I could walk fine, and then ever since then I've been still carrying that on, and I feel like mentally it's helped me a lot, and it's completely opened my mind to so many different ways that you can do things and heal and just see the world, really.
Yeah,
absolutely tremendous.
That's amazing that, you know, you've been going back to the hospital and all they want to do is give you painkillers.
Yeah.
You knew within yourself that that wasn't the way that you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And so you took it upon yourself to go to this Reiki healer. But it's amazing to see what, you know, what energy can do, you know,
Yeah.
and then what our mindset can do.
Yeah.
With what Dan's saying, do you think there was a feeling, an intuition not to take the painkillers? Do you think?
I physically took them, but then I got home and I was like, these make me so ill. And I was like my body's been through so much now. Like I don't want to put it through anything else. I don't want to be taking really strong painkillers. I don't want to go back onto the morphine, and because even being on all those things themselves, like coming off them was really hard. Used to get really bad morphine withdrawals. So me and my mom went, it was the first time we kind of started going out a bit, and we were like, well, we'll just go shopping. So we're near the car, so if you have to go home, like you haven't got a long walk back. And I forgot to take my liquid morphine, and I was having such big withdrawals off it. I was like collapsing, shaking, sweating, and I was like, this is not good for my body. Like, how is it meant to heal when it's got this many toxic things going inside of it? So I kind of wanted to look at different ways in which you can do things that wouldn't have any bad effects. So like I changed my diet, I've gone pretty much plant-based, and now I kind of focus a lot more on like spiritual healing, I guess.
Well, it seems to be working.
Yeah.
Didn't you say that you sort of got into a little bit of Reiki, and that's something that you want to?
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like that's where I want to go with my life, really. I want to be able to help people in a way that I've been helped. And I feel like I've been swaying with a few ideas for a while, but then since I started it's like I've gained so much from it. I feel like even just I feel like it's nice to have something physical that I've gained from it, because you can see that, whereas with the mental side, it's only you that knows that. But I've gained so much mentally from it. I kind of feel like I'm just getting to the point where I'm a lot more at peace with it all now.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose telling this story might, you know, it might have brought some things up, because I suppose you might not have gone into such detail with anyone about this kind of thing. But
Yeah.
then I bet it's good for you to also talk about this experience in detail.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of the first time I've spoke about what actually happened. There's not many people that I've ever really said about the full extent of what happened on that day, all the way through to how I've got better and how I've done things.
Mm-hmm.
So from this life-changing experience, you could say that it's maybe almost forced you, well, naturally now, but forced you into a new career, possibly.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen recently, I think, on social media, that you actually climbed Crib Goch. And to explain to our audience, that's quite a dangerous mountain range in Snowdon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're back to running, so this energy and the Reiki must be, and the mind, it must all be taking effect.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as well, when it's a shame that I've had to kind of go through having everything taken away from me. So everything I'd been working for, like with my skydiving and like even just general fitness before, everything after that day, everything was just gone, and I've had to start again. And it was quite hard being like, well, the one thing I love more than anything in this world has done this to me. And that was quite hard in itself to come back from and go back to. But then a big thing that I learned was that you have to do things, like no one's ever going to make you do anything. Like, you're a personal trainer. I could pay you, give me a plan, and I'm not going to get anything unless I physically want to do it and I'm motivated to do it. It's all kind of from within yourself that you have to do it, but you have to find that thing that motivates you. And my motivation was like, well, I've been in the worst possible state I can ever be in now. So I just want to get better. So once I could walk again, I was like, well, I want to run. Why can't I run? So then I started learning to run again, and that was so hard. And then as soon as we did that, I was like, well, I've never climbed a mountain. I want to do that. So we went and did quite an easy route at first, and then we came back down, and I was like, nah, that wasn't enough. I want to do that route now. And it's kind of like, as soon as I do something, I'm like, well, what's next? It's just kind of, I've always got some kind of goal that I'm working towards. Like this year, I'm like, well, now I can run. I want to do a half marathon. Like that's kind of my goal for the year now. So it's just kind of giving yourself goals, but achievable goals. So instead of me being like, well, I'm going to run half marathon next month, it's kind of like, well, I'm just going to keep doing a mile, and then I'll build it up until I'm fully comfortable. And it's not about pushing yourself to the extreme. It's more kind of looking after yourself while you're doing it.
It's those baby steps, isn't it? You've come such a long way. You break a. Would you say that for our listeners? Anything that's overwhelming them at the moment, if they break it down into small chunks or small steps, achievable, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. It's so much easier when you've got such small things to work on. So when I was learning to walk again, I'd be like, well, I can't go very far. So I'd walk out my drive and I'd be like, I'm going to go to that lamppost today, and then come home. It's not far. That's like 10 meters. So like that's not really, it doesn't have to be anything extravagant for you to feel like you've achieved something. But then 3 days later, I'm like, well, I can do this now. I'm going to go to the next one. And then I just keep going to like another lamppost each day, to the point where I was like, well, I don't even have to count this anymore. And another thing that really helped, and I still do it really, but just not in the same way, and I think it can help a lot of people, would be, I used to, if I achieved something for the first time, I'd write it down. I'd post about it all over Instagram, because I kind of felt like, well, it doesn't matter. No one actually cares. No one cares if I've achieved something. Only I do. But like, I'll post it everywhere. And I had like a diary, and I'd write the date of the first things that I do things. So the first time I showered, it'd been 2 months since I could have a shower. It was just so disgusting. But just things like that, I was like, well, today's the first day I showered. And then if I was ever feeling down and I'd be like, oh, I've got nowhere, like I'm doing so bad with all this, I'd just look back at it and be like, oh, remember when I couldn't even roll over in bed myself? And it was kind of, it really helped a lot.
Yeah, so tracking your progress, because
I think,
was there times that you were almost looking at other people you knew and like comparing yourself to them, but then doing that unconsciously, but then when you actually consciously brought yourself back to your own progress sheet, you'd be like, no, I'm doing fine.
Yeah, all the time. I think it's really easy to kind of get roped into what other people are doing, but then you just have to remind yourself that even if other people are doing the same thing, they'll have different goals out of it. Like, I know it's another gym example, but when I go to the gym, I'm like, well, I just want to get stronger to stop the pain, and that's my whole motive behind exercising and getting fit. Whereas your might be for like to look good or to like feel good, and everyone's just got different reasons for doing things, so you can't really compare what you're doing to someone else.
You've got to find your why, I suppose.
So just going back to you talking about the tracking, it's all about, you'd say that it's about, these are strong reference points, aren't they?
Yeah,
strong reference points that you can go back in your mind and think, oh, I did that last week, I've made progress, and it helps you make those small steps to the overall bigger picture to succeed.
Yeah, definitely.
Incredible. Well, this has been an absolutely incredible, for myself and Dan, I'm sure, and the listeners, inspirational podcast. I mean, I've been holding my breath. Sorry, listeners, I've been actually holding my breath listening to this what's actually happened to you, the traumatic events, and how you've come through this. You've literally smashed through it. Can I just ask you to leave our viewers and listeners with maybe some inspirational words from yourself, of if they're going through challenging or struggling at the moment, this current situation, what would you suggest?
I think you just need to, I think everyone just needs to find something in life that they love. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but just having something that you're passionate about, or that you care about, whether it's that you really love your family, so you want to spend more time with your family, or you really love, I don't know, like skydiving, you're like, well, that's the thing that keeps me going. And it's just finding things like that. And then, because once you kind of start getting wrapped up in the things that you enjoy and that you're passionate about, then you start to meet more people with the same mindsets and who enjoy the same things, and it kind of like your whole life just branches off from there then. So it's just about finding where you are in life really, and striving for just not even miles ahead. You're never like, I never look in the future like 10 years in time. I'm always like, well, what can I do this month that's gonna help me get better, or what can I do this month that's gonna make me feel better, or I can enjoy even, and just things like that. Those things really help me the most.
Yeah. So being truthful with yourself and asking what will actually make me feel good.
Yeah.
Well,
that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you. Yeah, from both of us. It's been
a real
been
honour.
a crazy story, and
yeah,
there are times that I just couldn't get my head around it. You know?
Yeah, me too. But thank you for letting me talk. But it's kind of nice to just let it all out.
It's been great to listen to. But yeah, thank you again, and I'm sure that anyone that listens to this is going to be inspired.
Definitely.
Thank you. I hope so.
Right then, I'm going to pause it there.